Danya Perry is a former federal prosecutor with the famed SDNY, and Joyce Vance, a former U.S. attorney and MSNBC columnist. Both of our experts have been covering and analyzing this story with us up to this point. And so with that in mind, Joyce, I'm curious what you think of these developments and how they fit into the way we have understood the case, which has started with some of the most sort of brazen, identifiable alleged crimes, now several of those crimes becoming guilty pleas, and then moving to other material that may need more evidence or corroboration.
This is the development that we've all expected ever since the news first broke that Greenberg was trying to negotiate a plea deal with federal prosecutors. It's interesting that it's taken such a lengthy period of time for him to get to this stage where they've offered him the plea. It suggests that prosecutors were meticulous about checking out the details in the story that Greenberg told them, because he is not a witness that the jury is going to be, I think, inclined to believe. He looks with these 33 charges. It's hard to figure out how Greenberg had any time to perform the duties of his elected office. He was so busy criming. But apparently something has checked out, and prosecutors believe he has value to offer. And on Monday, they'll see if a federal judge will accept that plea agreement and let the case move forward.
And Danya, reading again from the new filings, you have other men who Greenberg introduced the minor to, quote, engage in commercial sex acts with the minor in Greenberg's presence when the minor was under the age of 18. These are very serious offenses. I would note legally, these type of filings are quite precise. This is not like a tweet. This is not like just people talking. So when you see, as you've been a federal investigator like Joyce yourself, a prosecutor, when you see that reference to, quote, men, that would seem to be explicitly plural, which means means Greenberg plus at least two?
Yeah, I think the factual recitation is very detailed, as you say, and it goes to pains, I think, to make clear that not only is there corroboration, but that there are other targets out there. And as you said, it doesn't only have to be Matt Gaetz. In fact, with respect to some of the other charges, at least, there are other possible co-conspirators that fly off the page. But certainly with respect to the sex trafficking and the sex trafficking of a minor in particular, the filing goes to some lengths to make clear that there were co-conspirators, that Mr. Greenberg was aware of what they did, and in fact had watched some of the sexual contact. So they are giving a little bit of a roadmap, I think, of what we can expect to see in the days or weeks or months to come.
Yeah, and you mentioned the corroboration, which is important regardless of how people may feel about anyone caught up in the investigation. This is about facts and what really happened, not anything else. The New York Times, dealing with the same court documents I mentioned that have made such explosive impact today, says prosecutors revealing they have evidence they say corroborates Greenberg's admissions. Exactly what we've been talking about. Quote, a series of communications and transactions Greenberg had with the, quote, girl appeared to design to bolster the credibility of Mr. Greenberg as a witness. Danya, walk us through that, because it would appear from the way Mr. Greenberg has conducted himself that there will be some credibility problems, that he has already said and done things that are misleading, deceitful, untrue. So walk us through what you or your team might do at SDNY in a situation like this, where you're trying to then move past that to figure out what you can prove. They obviously don't want to be on the wrong end of this, only taking his word for it. They're themselves jailing him, the prosecutors, by their own view of him being a very serious felon.
Yeah, as Joyce said, there's an incredible amount of criming that's detailed at length in this filing. And it's not just, sometimes you'll see acts of violence or narcotics trafficking. A lot of these go really squarely to his credibility. In fact, one of the charges, the cyberstalking charge, has him lying about sexual contact by another adult man with another child. And so there's a lot of built-in defenses, or a lot of built-in fodder for cross-examination by, a defense lawyer if and when Mr. Greenberg takes the stand. So, of course, the prosecutors, and they've made this very clear in this filing, have spent a lot of time trying to corroborate this. And luckily, Mr. Greenberg is not just a criminal, but he's a terrible one. Literally left his fingerprints on some documents, literally has receipts, literally wrote out a detailed handwritten confession. So there's going to be a lot there for them. They likely, as Joyce said, they've spent a lot of time. So no doubt before entering into this plea agreement have already done a lot of that hard work, have spoken certainly with lots of witnesses, including, as you brought up, Ari, it seems this former girlfriend of Mr. Gaetz's, who is seeking, according to the reports, immunity for herself. So she could be a very, very bad witness for Mr. Gaetz should the prosecutors go down that road.
So, Joyce, what do you see here on the side of Matt Gaetz? Because as we've taken pains to explain here to viewers, there's a difference between what Greenberg says and what reports like Daily Beast and others that have been all over this story cite from him and his circle. That's here, right? And then there's when the feds actually find something that they want to use. That's a much higher standard. What's going on in Gaetz' world? What would they say or look at legally here to try to argue that this may still not ensnare him?
Well, we know that this issue with Greenberg in at least one other case, supposedly lying about an individual who he was involved in a political race with and saying that he was involved with sexual conduct with a minor. We know that Gaetz's lawyers have already come forward, his spokespeople, and used that to suggest that Greenberg is unreliable. So what they're worried about now is likely how well the federal government has been able to corroborate charges. And that's the difficult decision that they'll have to face in handling any steps federal prosecutors take. Ari, it's worth noting that the Middle District of Florida, where this case is being prosecuted, that is a large and well-regarded U.S. Attorney's office. They have folks who've been in that office for a couple of decades, lots of institutional knowledge and expertise, and they're well aware of federal rules that require that they only indict if they believe that they have sufficient evidence not only to obtain a conviction, but to sustain it on appeal. If prosecutors in Orlando indict Matt Gaetz, expect the case to stick. It'll be a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Joyce, I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you have a witness, say an expert witness, and they're so good you want to like hold them over after the jury lunch break. Have you ever had that happen?
Every once in a while, Ari.
Yeah, sometimes you need more from the experts. What I want to do is ask both of you to stay as our expert witnesses tonight. We're going to have our shortest break, which is just 30 seconds, but our experts stay because the other big story, a new subpoena in a criminal probe into former President Trump, pressure on a witness. We're back in 30 seconds.